Ahoy! We have some good news and some bad news about upcoming new world content. I'm going to start with the major piece of bad content first, so we have that out of the way. Yesterday there was an announcement that there would be a war on the PTR. It's a war in First Light that you can participate in, and it'll start a couple of hours after this video is released, so if you want to do that you can sign up at First Light. The post reads, "We'd love for you to help test leaderboards with us. Additionally, anyone who participates will receive a title reward, and any player who makes it on the leaderboards will receive an additional title as a thank you for participating. Note that these title rewards will not be available right away, but we expect them to be awarded in the future. See you on PTR." Also, Delakron said that these will be two unique new in-game titles and not the Warmonger title that was given out for past PTRs. In this context, for receiving the special title, it also doesn't matter which place you're in on the leaderboards as long as you're on the leaderboards, otherwise you just get the participation reward for the war. So even if you just got a lower end rating on the leaderboards from playing OPR, that would still count for the leaderboards title. Signups for this war will start first come first serve at 2 PM PST, and they're considering making multiple wars after each other depending on how much demand there is. Now I could talk about how abysmal the time of the war is for any player playing from Australia, but let's focus on the main point here, which is why this is bad news for all of us. Last week the team was asked about the other upcoming changes that they had teased, and they were saying, well, we have something cool planned for next week, and people were thinking, okay, it sounds like we're likely gonna get those cool changes next week then. I was actually joking around in a couple of Discord about how the worst possible outcome could be that all they do is announce a test war for the scoreboards. And then they did exactly that. I want to emphasize again that the current version of leaderboards is just extremely terrible, because it relies on score, which is a terrible metric, and testing that in a war is not going to show you anything that you haven't already seen in Outpost Rush. We all know that score is a bad metric. It has been tested for many wars already. We know who's on the top of scoreboards and who isn't. There's nothing new to be discovered from having a likely very uneven war on PTR. In fact, somebody already did a completely broken war against another company where they intentionally just fed into that person, and that person got a massively insane score. On that note, all hail barrels. But seriously though, I get that I sound a little bit like a broken record here, but this needs to be said again in the context what we're about to hear. My only hope is that whoever is organizing this war just needs even more proof that score is a bad system and they want to use this war to show that. I pray that that's the case, but it's very unlikely at this point given the communication we've received so far. Now why would I say that? Because today there was a post asking if there would be no balanced PTR update or changes. That there's basically zero content and no balance changes in combination, just the leaderboard stuff. And that got a deaf response from Delakron. Again, something that I would have rather heard from them first before someone asked, but at least we're getting an answer. The current PTR build is a more immediate patch coming to live servers within the next week or so, mainly focused on quality of life bugs and leaderboards. This is something that would have been fantastic to know from the start. This is also something that is concerning. On previous PTRs we usually had more balance changes that came over time, and then after a month or so the patch was released. This time we're seeing a much quicker release of leaderboards. But the feedback to leaderboards so far hasn't been positive at all. I think most people agree that PvE leaderboards are pretty decent, but most people in the forum threads also definitely agree that PvP leaderboards based on score are not good. Most either want different things to be tracked, often things that are actively encouraging you to participate in the game mode, or they want nothing in PvP to be tracked for leaderboards until there is MMR, so until it actually makes sense to track something that is functional and makes sense for leaderboards. But outside of just straight up removing everything PvP related from the leaderboards, it seems very unlikely that they would be able to fix these things up in a week and then ship it to the live client. And that very much makes me think that they're planning to go through with the current version of leaderboards despite all the negative feedback they have received. A version of leaderboards that would effectively make the game more toxic and less pleasant to play for most players. I suspect they may be planning to run with the scuffed version of leaderboards first and say, hey, we can just fix them up later and then it's better for everyone, but that is kind of what they said about Arena and then haven't touched it since. But it can't be all bad news. So Delakron tell us some more. Beyond that, we have a pretty big announcement and sizable PTR update which will follow quick on its heels. This is what you're likely expecting, and truthfully, we're excited about it too. So this is likely where all of those weapon changes that we're talking about and all the ammo weight changes and whatever else they have planned are hopefully included. But saying it's following quick on its heels is very vague, and given it's at least a week or so until the patch actually gets released, I would expect at least 2 weeks or maybe more until we see those changes on the PTR, and then significantly longer until we see them on live. All in all, I would be very positively surprised if we see any significant changes before the end of February. Of course, there's the possibility that they're also planning to push the other changes out quickly, but that leads to significant balance concerns. In return, if we exclude leaderboards, which I don't count as content because they're really just tracking already existing content, that would mean we have 3 months between any content being added to New World. And the content that was added last was a slightly modified winter event that was arguably worse, so I wouldn't really call that a big content update either. I'm really excited for the changes that they're planning, but once again they have a very weird strategy when it comes to spacing out their content. By the way, they're talking about this pretty big announcement as well, and I'm seeing some speculation going around about this potentially being about the next weapon. I'm not saying that it's impossible, there is a chance that that's the case, and maybe that's why they have been stalling content for so long, because they've invested so much time into that, but I am more inclined to believe that this is the overhaul to mutations. They already mentioned that they want to take away the negative modifiers for mage weapons for mutations, and I wouldn't be very surprised if that comes along with the squishing of the current mutation levels and so on, just overhauling this whole system so it's more usable in general. That would still be good news and a decent feature. I just don't want people to get overly excited for a potential weapon release and then disappointed if it doesn't happen. So rather too little hype than too much. In a separate reply, Delakron also announced that there will be a new batch of world merges coming soon. And on the topic of world merges, I can flex my German skills here a little bit, because there was a German reply to something that I talked about recently. The servers Tartarus and Nisa were merged, Tartarus being a German-English server and Nisa being a French-English server. And it seems that AGS pulled a bit of a sneaky one on us here. Muzzlebart, the German community manager, says that language-based servers basically no longer exist, and they just took out the label at some point. It's kind of funny because those labels still exist on New World Database, so you can still find out what servers used to be at least, but they have basically not communicated that this is the idea. They just don't want to have language servers anymore apparently, I guess based on player population or support or whatever, and just decided to remove the labels and now are like, well, the labels are not there, so they don't exist. And Muzzlebart straight up told us that language is not even considered as a metric when merging servers. Again, before this merge there were still 2 German servers with a lot of German players. At this point, I'd like to remind you to subscribe and click the bell if you enjoyed this video, and also to head over to the forums and tell the devs how you feel about leaderboards in the leaderboard feedback thread in the PTR section. I don't know if 10 more people telling them that score sucks will actually do anything, but we can at least try. And on the topic of things that absolutely don't suck, I'd like to thank my patrons for supporting this video. I'd also like to thank you for watching. SLOTH, out.